You need some more Raised on D&D but can't wait the whole month? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Here's your mid-month short. Welcome back to Raised on D&D. I'm your host, Nick Cardarelli, and my guests today are from Lakeland, Florida. They're the dungeon mastering duo who have founded the Adventurers Guild, the Teens and Tweens D&D program at the Lakeland Public Library. Please welcome Brian Mathers and Charles Frierman. Hi, guys.
Hey.
Hello.
Thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Now, you both work here at the Lakeland Public Library, is that correct?
That is correct.
Yes.
I just automatically assume you're librarians, but do you have a different title than that?
Yeah, I'm a library associate. And
I'm a library technical assistant.
Okay, so Brian, you're the technical assistant, and Charles, you're the associate. We're wanting to have you on the show today because there are a lot of folks who work with youth and they want to kind of have an idea, and you guys have done something really phenomenal. My son has come to several sessions of the Adventurers Guild here at the Lakeland Public Library and has really enjoyed it. So we're going to jump right in, we're going to talk about it, but before we get into the Adventurers Guild, we kind of want to get to know you as gamers. So Brian, if we could start with you,
Sure.
Just tell us a little bit about how, when and how you got into tabletop role-playing games.
And it's kind of funny, you have a podcast called Raised on D&D, because actually I was not raised on D&D. I was a late bloomer into Dungeons and Dragons. In fact, I remember as a kid showing my mother an ad for Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition, and she forbidding it from the house. This is the time, of course, of Bothered About Dungeons & Dragons,
Yes.
The Satanic Panic.
Mm-hmm.
I had to wait till around 2005 or 06 when I was out of high school and had my own job to buy my own stuff.
Wow.
And even when my mother discovered that I had these D&D books, she just said, "All right, I'll let you play it, Brian, but if you get involved in any shenanigans, you're going to be in big trouble." And she had warmed up to it when she had seen, me and my friends play at the house. And, and you see these guys sitting around a table, we're rolling dice and moving miniatures. And it's like, oh, this isn't satanic at all.
Mm-hmm.
So she has warmed up to it and, in fact, has encouraged me to run Dungeons & Dragons with my niece and nephew.
Oh wow! Okay,
Yeah.
So the family that forbade Dungeons and Dragons during the Satanic Panic, once that veil was kind of pulled back, and she was able to see what it was really about. Now she's okay with you introducing it to.
She's very enthusiastic, actually, about it.
Enthusiastic about it. That is quite a 180 turn. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Thank you, Brian. And Charles, how'd you get started with tabletop role playing games?
I think it was kind of weird. I got out of school early. I think they called it the DCT program, where you leave early to go to work.
Yes.
And that day I didn't have to work, so I just went over to a friend's house, and they happened to maybe have taken the day off, but they were playing a game called D&D that day. And I walked in, they're like, "Oh yeah, just come on over." And so I came in, and I saw them, I guess my friend was clearing his territory so he could build a castle. And I just walked in and I saw him pointing at hex paper, just pointing at the spot going, "I don't know what to do." And I was like, this is the weirdest game I've ever seen in my life. But then I kind of watched it for a little bit, and then I was like, that seems kind of neat. And the next day my friend's like, "Hey, do you want to give it a try? I can set you up with a character and get you introduced." And I remember it was a big pirate ship escape scenario that I had to do. And once I played it once, forget it. It was over. Like, I was over their house like every day.
You were hooked.
I was hooked. I never took the day off, Mom and Dad, but I did go over with
I cannot say that. I may have called out sick to play Call of Cthulhu in high school and college. So what games do you guys have experience with? So you like Dungeons and Dragons, obviously. Is there other games that you play or run?
Me being in a late stage, I was big into Dungeons & Dragons 3.5
Okay.
And its derivatives like D20 Modern, Pathfinder, the 5th edition. I would say the only thing I didn't play that was in Dungeons & Dragons was the White Wolf games, the people that made Vampire the Masquerade and Mage the Awakening.
Okay, all right.
And Brian ran a few games for me one time, but so he knows more about what they were, but the only ones I played before then was D&D and one called Gamma World, which was
Gamma World, yeah.
kind of a post-nuclear setting where mutated animals are running amok. So
yes,
that one was fun as well.
So that's great. That's great. So you have a little bit of variety experience with different games. With the Adventurers Guild, what inspired you guys to start the Adventurers Guild? What was it that made this all come together?
Sure. I would say a little bit before the Adventurers Guild, this was around 07 or 08, me and Charles and several of our co-workers would form about an hour before our shift began on Sundays. We would play Dungeons and Dragons and other role-playing games. And so that's where I learned that Charles loved role-playing games and stuff. And when he transferred over from adult services over to here to youth services, we had been talking about, different programs we could probably bring up, so we came up with the idea, since we both love role-playing games, and probably, I know it would be the noble idea to say that, we wanted to really reach children, and we wanted to inspire, and that probably was a little bit on the side. I think our big thing was, we get paid to play Dungeons and Dragons. That'll be awesome.
Yes. It's all our dream, right? It's all our dream. It's the shared dream of all gamers.
So I'd like to say also, we're really lucky to work in an environment in a place like the Lakeland Public Library where they're open to ideas like that and can see actually the value of kids playing a game such as that. Because a lot of places would say immediately.
Yes. So can you tell us a little bit about that? You guys come up with this idea. You go, hey, that would be great. You pitched it to work. Now, how did the Lakeland Public Library, and remember folks who are listening and other countries, we're in Central Florida here, and in Southern America, the Satanic Panic of the 80s was very live and real, as you heard from Brian's testimony. So how did the administration respond to, we want to play Dungeons and Dragons at work?
I think we never had any pushback. I think one of the things that was attractive is because I already owned the books and I owned the dice, there really was no financial commitment from the library's part. The only thing they committed was just the room and papers and pencils and little things like that. So we never got a pushback. I will say when we first started out, we did have a problem with attendance. This was when we first started, this was around the 4th edition of Dungeons and Dragons, and even that was tapering off. There was Pathfinder, but I don't think we had the explosion in popularity that you see nowadays. So sometimes we would get 4 or 5 kids, sometimes it'd just be me, Charles, and maybe a volunteer that was supposed to be working here that we pulled in just for a body for the room. But we never had an official, anyone saying, no, don't do this.
I think a lot of it too was when we started out, not a lot of people were exposed to role-playing games, at the library, because they come from school and they come over. They had no idea what it was in the beginning.
So what year are we talking here?
Was it 4 or 5 years ago?
4 or 5 years, about 4 or 5 years.
So it's right at the end of 4th edition.
Yeah.
And 5th edition is on the horizon but hasn't come yet.
Around that time.
That's the time period, right? So when did you see the explosion? Because when we've been to your events, it's a packed room, 2 large tables. I think I've told people before, 8 to 6, and then the last time we came out, there was almost 3 full tables. So tell us, when did you see the transition?
I would say
the last couple of years.
Yeah, 2016 I think is when we started seeing, a couple kids would come in and then they would bring some of their friends or some other people would be brought in. I would definitely say 2017 to present is when we started seeing that upswing.
Okay.
Because we kind of got a core group that would always come. That's like in the beginning they were coming because they thought there might be snacks, but soon we actually found a core group of players that were really actually getting into it. They started living it. Some of the guys at my table started off kind of treating it like a joke a little bit and just having fun and just hey, I'm a dancing character. And but I go with whatever you give me. So then they actually started liking that, and then they started reading the books, I think, and then they really got in. They're so serious about it now. It's awesome.
That's fantastic. And so real grassroots. You guys kind of start with, offering this service. It's really slow at first, and then you start getting some regulars, and then they become a core group. And what happens? These guys start pulling in their friends. Is that what happened?
Sometimes their friends would come in, but sometimes we would have people just off the street, parents who just read about us. They would sometimes call and ask, what is this Lakeland Adventurers Guild? And it is kind of hard to sometimes sum up Dungeons and Dragons over a telephone call. You do the best you can. But they would bring their kids, and their kids would sit there and would sit and play, and they would come back the next week. So the core group would kind of branch first from friends and then from parents bringing in their children to play with us.
And we've been a lot of homeschool kids as well, as I think they're branching out and trying stuff out, and they seem to really catching fire with it. And sometimes the high school kids come in, it's like, oh, we're too cool for that or whatever, and they want to stay in their packs. But but we're finding like different groups now that are breaking away from the pack mentality, that are too cool to try something new type of thing.
Now, the Adventurers Guild is for tweens and teens, so we're talking junior high and high school students. Is that right? What are some of the benefits that you've seen in the community that's kind of developed because of the Adventurers Guild? What have you seen changes in the group as they've gone along?
The main thing I've seen at my table, I'm guessing we both have different dynamics, but is that the teamwork is like gotten phenomenally better. Like in the beginning it was more kind of like solo, I'm going to do this, I don't care what you're doing. And now it's like, hey, you do this while I do this, and everybody's like got a strategy, and it's really good to see them like working together as a team, and like even discussing plans before it happens. And so that's, I think, the biggest change for me is just seeing that teamwork and camaraderie amongst the table.
And so Charles, so you've seen them kind of go from that first-person shooter mentality to really work coordinating strategies together.
And to me that's what it's all about too. It's like super fun.
Absolutely, a group win.
And including what Charles said, I have also seen some of the finest expressions of creativity and imagination. I mean, I've seen these kids, they will draw their characters. It's some very well done. Some of it, without naming names, the quality may be a little, but you could see the passion that they had even if they drew a stick figure. I've seen them draw their characters. I've seen them write fan fiction about their character or talk about the backstory of their character. So it's really great. You can definitely see the expert and how seriously they'll take this game of paper and dice.
And it branches out into other creative mediums, like drawing and writing and things like that. So you've seen that, and this is just the sampling that you've experienced firsthand from the kids at the Adventurers Guild. So my next question is, have you heard any of them talking about gaming outside of the Adventurers Guild?
Actually, I know your group definitely games outside.
Yes, a lot of the core group that kind of centers around my table, they are gamers in their own right. They do a home group. They just happen to congregate also here just because it's another opportunity to game. And I know one of the young men, he is the DM, so he enjoys coming here just to be as a player.
Right, getting that break from behind the screen.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know my table too, they I've heard them discussing it before. I don't have the knowledge directly that they do it, but they actually probably know the rules better than me now, so I'm pretty sure that they've been playing on their own. So I'm usually consulting with them on what actually should be happening here. So.
Now, I remember it's probably been 2 years now. The Adventurers Guild started off with a rules light option to start it off. Tell me where that idea came from and why you guys went that route with it.
At the time, we did one of our big, perks or advantages that made us attracted to the library was there was no real cost of it. We never went to the library and said, we need books. And so one of the rule systems I found was what's called Microlight 5e. This is someone that took the 5th edition rules and distilled them kind of into a rules light, what is known as a Microlight game. And so they offered it for free other than just printing it out. So we had the idea of like, well, instead of trying to bug the library about books, we'll just download and print this thing out. And because Charles came from a 2E background, an era where you didn't have all the rules spelled out and you kind of were expected to sort of eyeball things as the GM. And I always loved tinkering and being the person that made up rules or experimented with the system. It just seemed like at the time, like a great system that the library would approve of just because they didn't have to spend any money on it.
And it was simple enough that we wouldn't overwhelm like newcomers to the game. That was what our main concern was. We didn't want them to be intimidated when they came in for the first time. We wanted it to be something relatively easy just to sit down and play like that.
Yes, and so being overwhelmed is a real thing, and we've all experienced it. Brian, I'm sure when you got the box set and the rule books, when you first saw them, you were like, wow, that's a lot of math. And Charles, like you said, you sat down, they're looking at a hex grid map, and you're like, this is so weird, right? So it can be overwhelming when we first show up.
The first time, I keep trying to get her to play a little bit, but she said her first experience with it was a friend that was, I guess just his DM sent him home to do homework, and he was just like typing up like character stuff and doing reports, and she's like, there is no way I'm ever playing that game. just watching someone being overwhelmed. So I haven't had any breakthroughs on that yet. So.
Well, what advice would you give other administrators who are interested in this sort of thing?
Well, hopefully you have a couple people that are really passionate about it, working there, and that have a background in it a little bit, because it's one of those games that's hard to, unless you've been introduced to it, to just start from scratch, because it takes a lot of figuring out. But if somebody there with a background, I think would help a lot, and they of course have the passion to introduce it to people as well. So that would be it. Because to me, D&D is amazing. I think Brian can say the same. But like, I was a super quiet kid, and like I never did anything, and I didn't like high school and this. But then once I found that game, I kind of found boundaries breaking down. It's like, hey, I can play a character and I can be comfortable with this, and I can, it allowed me to branch out and to try things and not be afraid to fail at things. And I started playing music. I got into acting a little bit, and it's really, I think D&D was the one that started breaking down those boundaries for me to actually become something a little bit more. Like, my parents, luckily too, was always super, super supportive of me. Like, the game, they were probably like, but they trusted me, and they're like, oh, if he likes the game, then it's probably all right. So I think it has a lot of value, D&D, for kids growing up especially, because it's an escape, but also a way to get your confidence up as well.
And to add to that, because I think those cover the points, is you need passion. I would definitely suggest anyone who's wanting to start one, maybe look for a rules lighter system, a microlight system, or something that is designed that you could fit the information of a character in maybe one page. Just kind of feel out what is the level, where your players at. If they are all new people, maybe a slightly more rules-light game would appeal to them rather than a heavier game. Not that I would ever say 5th edition was a very heavy game, but you might want to start where they don't have as many, I guess, little micro powers or little subsystems that they have to learn on the get-go.
And the other thing that you guys do is the Adventurers Guild's meetings are an hour and a half. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So so for most of our gamers, a game session is anywhere from 4 to 3 days, right? so an hour and a half is a very short session. And why did you guys?
Well, it's a lot of things. Well, first of all, the kids get out of school later in the day, so we wanted to keep it accessible to high school, junior high that go to school, as well as homeschoolers. So they get out around 3-ish.
Yeah.
And we close at 5 on Friday, so we automatically have a built-in time period. But Also, staff scheduling is a tricky thing too, because we have to cover the desk at the library. We have to kind of work on other programs. So, we have to. Our supervisor has to kind of budget hours, so to speak, so, to allow us. Because probably if it was up to me and Brian, we would do your
3 to 4 days.
Yeah, 3 or 4 days. But I don't think the kids' parents would be too excited about it.
But yeah, they were more policy constrictions just by the library standards more than any kind of personal thing. I would say I'm pretty sure the kids kind of also appreciate kind of getting in and getting out, especially at the end of a long day. You might not be your most creative, even though they get pumped up pretty quick. I'm pretty sure they do like the ability to like go home and finally rest after a brief game day.
And you're not competing with their Friday night activities,
Exactly.
Especially for high schoolers. The youth services area of the Lakeland Public Library has really developed and evolved over time and has become this hangout for teens and tweens for after school. It's really a treasure of our community.
Yeah, and our head librarian's been really good about that. Like, she designed the teen room so it's a place just for teens, no adults, no little kids. So the teens actually do have a place they can come feel comfortable in. And then we have the separate section for the children, separate section for the toddlers. And so it's like a very, I'd say, happy environment for all age groups that they can feel comfortable in. And like you said, our supervisor, Monica, is just amazing at like putting together programs and finding people that are open-minded to try different things with the teens.
And she's always been very supportive of the Lakeland Adventurers Guild.
That is fantastic. What's the future looking like for the Lakeland Adventurers Guild? Are there plans to expand? Are you guys going to be adding dungeon masters? What is the immediate future looking like for you guys?
I mean, a lot of it depends on, I guess, the school year. Because like we said, like in the beginning, it was hard to get kids, and then now we're having a little bit of a boom. So if it continues to grow like that, then it would be probably nice if we get some of the more experienced kids to maybe even run their own table. Like have one of them do the DMing and see where that takes it, and then maybe have like 3 tables going. So like the fewer number, like 5 or 6, would be pretty awesome per table because the kids get more time as well. So
I would say the immediate thing is we have started to, even though we did start as a rules light table, we have actually begun to embrace the 5th edition as pretty much a good sweet spot for moderate content, but it's never been as overwhelming. So we have begun to actually work with the library in purchasing actual professional hardback books for the tables.
Wow, that's... Brian, Charles, thank you so much for being on the show today. I can't tell you how much it means to me, how much the Lakeland Adventurers Guild means to my family, and how much the youth services program here at the Lakeland Public Library means to our whole community. So thank you so much for sharing with us.
And thank you for doing the podcast as well.
Yes.
It's really, it touches my heart to see D&D promoted in such a positive light. So, and like I said, it meant a lot to me growing up, and it's very important.
Yes, I was very excited. Thank you for hosting us, Nick.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to this month's Raised on D&D, the podcast about family and gaming. Be sure to like our page at www.facebook.com/Raised on D&D podcast, where you can find exclusive content, transcripts of the episode, and links to the resources that we discussed. As always, happy gaming.